Welcome to Power Talk. I'm your host, Tom Power. Before we get started, please smash that like button and subscribe to get more content from Power Talk. My guest today is locally, nationally, and internationally known musician Fergus O'Byrne. Welcome, Fergus.
Thanks, Tom. Nice to meet you. Nice
You
to see
too.
you again.
Nice to see you again, too. You're well known as a member of Ryan's Fancy, a crowd of bold Sharemen, a member of Tickle Harbor, and part of a duo with Jim Payne, correct?
That's right, yeah.
You were born in Dublin. You came to Newfoundland, I believe it was Toronto in 1967.
I was born in Dublin, yeah, and I immigrated to Canada in 1967 to Toronto with really no intentions of becoming a full-time musician. I had always been involved with music when I was a child. I studied piano for 7 years, but then like everybody around the 60s, fell into the whole folk scene and started playing the guitar and then mandolin. And when I got to Toronto, I was just banging around, playing at different parties like you would in those days when people met, especially in my ilk. You were inclined to sit around and just sing songs and sing folk songs, protest songs, Bob Dylan, whatever. And one thing led to another, and I met up with a couple of guys in the Windsor House in Toronto, and playing one night, then 2 nights, then 3 nights, and it came to the point where I had to make a decision: was I going to continue with a day job or just go at music and see what happened, which I did, and hooked up with Ralph O'Brien and Gary Kavanagh, and that was the initial forming of the Sons of Erin in the Windsor House in Toronto. And then just through bands breaking up and joining up through osmosis, eventually ended up with Dennis and Dermot in Toronto, where we decided to move to Newfoundland to go to university, put ourselves through university, playing music, and that was the full intention of coming to Newfoundland. There was no set plan to be on TV or anything like that. It just that's the way it happened. We were at the right time, the right place, and just a bit of luck and talent, and we ended up at the television work.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. How was that for 4 or 5 years with the TV show? I know I used to watch it all the time.
Yeah, well, it was quite rigorous. We first started off, but the way it happened was that Jack Kellum, a producer out of Toronto, at the time, CBC were mandating that they would have regional shows from various parts of the country. That was the idea to it, to regionalize CBC rather than consolidate it into what it is now. Seems to be in a lot of cases, and anyway, that most of the feed comes out from a central point. But in those days, they wanted to spread out across the country. And Jack Kellum was mandated to come to Atlantic Canada, to Newfoundland, to produce a show out of St. John's that would reflect the East Coast. And he happened to meet up with us, and through conversations, we came up with the idea of the show to feature and explore the province first of all, and then it extended onto Atlantic Canada. But to explore the province, I guess, through our eyes, and maybe in retrospect, Jack and ourselves, knowingly or unknowingly, had the idea that okay, we had three Irish immigrants who could see Newfoundland through different eyes, and yet similar eyes, because Newfoundland, obviously, the culture here is similar to the British Isles and Ireland and England. And so we ended up getting a television show. We did it in the studio first, but we quickly realized that the guests that we were featuring, who were tradition bearers, we call them tradition bearers. Now these were people from various communities, small communities around the island and Labrador, that we felt that they would be more comfortable in their own setting. So we took the show on the road, and we would go to small communities, like, for example, down the Great Northern Peninsula with Rufus Ginchard, out to Southeast Bight with Pious Power, and on, Minnie White and stuff. And yeah, it was quite rigorous, quite obviously exciting, and uh, it was treading new territories. But the interesting thing at the same time, around the same time, excuse me, was that we were also flying to Hamilton, Ontario, to work on a show with Tommy Makem. So the show was Tommy Makem and Ryan's Fancy, which was syndicated by CHCH, so CTV and stuff like that. So at the same time that we were on television across the country on CBC, we were also being featured across the country with with CHCH and CTV networks. So we were on two stations, and of course, when you go back to those days, a lot of rural Canada only had two stations, so
Yeah.
you couldn't get away from us really. So it was, it was quite obviously we became what you might call a TV band at the time, and then you had to also remember people would have to remember that each household maybe had one television set and that was it. So whatever the domineering person in the house watched, everybody watched. So a lot of young people were sitting with their parents watching Ryan's Fancy. So all in all, and at the same time, we were also doing a lot of live shows when we traveled. Not only would we do television shows, but we would also book ourselves into local bars or local halls, universities, whatever, wherever we could, wherever we could drum up the work. So we were very, very busy musicians, touring extensively and working extremely hard at what we were doing. And it paid off, for those 13 years.
Yeah, yeah. I know you played at the Strand Lounge a bit. Uh,
The Strand Lounge was really the stomping grounds for everybody when you think of it. I mean, we were there, but also, Dick Nolan had played there. I'm not sure if Harry Hibbs did, but Sons of Erin, Dublin Corporation, bands were coming from all over the country, even from the Caribbean, there were bands. I mean, and they were 7 nights a week and a Saturday afternoon matinee. So it was, it wasn't like these days where, I mean, bars are open 7 days a week, obviously, and venues are open, but you wouldn't get the same band playing night after night for a whole week. So it's the work was there, and you talk to musicians around Newfoundland, even those who, I shouldn't say even, but those musicians who didn't make it to TV or anything like that, but they were making a living just touring Newfoundland. You could go on the road for about 6 weeks and play. You could play, St. John's for a week, then go to Gander for a week, then Grand Falls for a week, Cornerbrook for a week, Stephenville for a week. So you could have a, 6 week tour doing gigs.
yeah, yeah. Um, so do you have a favorite memory or story about or a favorite city that you've played in Newfoundland or outside of Newfoundland?
Well, I always kind of go back and remember, we did a lot of work in Placentia Bay where I'm associated with True Family. Uh, One of my fond memories is we were doing a show with Pius Power in Southeast Bight, and we were staying in Pius's house. At least I was staying in Pius's house. We were farmed out around the community, but I remember staying at Pius Power's house, and Pius and his son Pius Jr. They were going fishing every morning, even though we were filming late into the night. They would be out fishing in the morning. So I remember saying to Pius that I'd like to go out some morning with them. They said, no, no. I saw it really early, 5 o'clock in the morning. You don't want to be at that. So I said, no, no, we'll go out. So I went out with them, and my memory is of being in the boat and them fishing, and all the time we were doing that, they were pawing in the nets and stuff like that. We were singing songs, sharing songs back and forward. I was sitting back in the boat, and I'd sing a song, and then Pius Junior would sing a song, and back and forward and chit chatting, and that was quite a memory really of playing. But in terms of me various cities and stuff, I've had the great fortune as a musician over the years, not only with Ryan's Fancy, but beyond that with Crowd of Board Sharemen and with Jim Payne, of playing pretty much in all over the world, Australia, Europe, down the States, Mexico. So one of the big gigs we had, myself and Jim were at, was a place called Thunder Festival in Europe, and I remember seeing the Dubliners there playing it's the same festival, and then we had a, a remarkable tour down in Tasmania. We went to Australia for 5 weeks, and part of that was 10 days on the island of Tasmania, playing shows in different communities all over, different villages and towns all over Tasmania. So that was quite enlightening. I mean, and the Tasmanians, it's an island. It's an island off the coast of Australia. It was amazing how similar Tasmanians were to Newfoundlanders in their attitude towards life and attitude towards Australia as we are to Canada.
Okay, yeah. You graduated from Memorial University with a degree in education.
I did.
Um, I know you've since promoted traditional folk music to children as both a teacher and a performer. You've even developed a show featuring songs, stories, and slides related to your native country. You've presented this show throughout the province to school kids. How do they respond to the show?
That again, that all started. My wife was a teacher, and I remember one time she asked me would I come into her class. She suggested I come into the class and show some slides, and it was around St. Patrick's time, which I did, and it worked really well. The kids, I was I'm assuming I was entertaining to the children. And so I developed that show that I used to tour around St. Patrick's Day. But because of my degree in education, I guess I took an interest in promoting and delivering cultural programming to schools around the island and Labrador. And myself and Jim Payne now for the last 20 years, that's what we've done. A fair portion of our work during the year is done in schools, and it's enabled by the Arts NL and through various private sponsors and government to put artists in schools whereby we can present ourselves. And you have a variety of art going into schools. It so happens myself and Jim present cultural programming. And basically, we talk about the importance of the culture and of the heritage of what we have here in the province and relate it to the curriculum. It stretches right across, not only with music, but there's biology in there talking about the fish, there's sociology, there's math, there's everything, science, the science of instruments, how they work, how they sound. So it's quite a wide variety of topics we cover when we go into schools, and it's great. I mean, you never know, as it well, any teachers listening out there or looking at this will know that you never know what you're creating or you're hoping to create a spark. And I've had people come up to me 15 years later who said, "Oh, you were in my school, when I was in grade 7 or something like that. You sang this song, or you sang that song." And they're maybe living in Alberta now, and they say the same story all the time. They never realized how much the music meant to them until now, and now that they're away, they realize the special culture that we have here in this part of the world. And that's
Yeah, yeah,
always that's always nice to hear that you have made a difference, and you have created an interest in somebody else. And really, that's what the whole idea of music is about to me. And anyways, passing it along down the line. I mean, I work also with a program called Young Folk at the Hall with the Newfoundland Labrador Folk Arts Society here in town, and we have a program called Young Folk at the Hall, and where we are involving young people in folk music and exploring folk music. And I always pretty much say to the kids, look, the music is yours to borrow, but pass it along to the next generation. And that's what I found when I came here first through the tradition bearers that I met, people such as Rufus and Minnie White and Emile Benoit, and others. They were very generous to share the music with me, and I learned then to share my music with younger people as well, and just to keep the music moving along.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I remember Emile Benoit in particular, uh, at the folk festivals and stuff, and he was just such a fine gentleman.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, no, he was great, and they all were. I mean, Minnie White was an extraordinary person when you think of it. And woman in her late, up in her 60s when she went back into music after raising a family, and organized and produced all her own albums and booked all her own shows, and was just a powerhouse in terms of running her own business as a music. And when you're in the music business, it is partially a business. I mean, you have to treat it as a business. It just can't be a it's a lark for sure, but the business of it is keeps you on your toes, and you spend more time. I find I spend more time sitting at a computer than I do on stage, but it's all part and parcel of what one does.
Absolutely. Um, I read an article. I think it was from 2019, and you said you were concerned with the declining youth interest in traditional instruments. Uh, has that changed since that article was published? And has the interest grown or declined?
Well, it's all a new learning process, as we all know now. COVID took a big chunk out of everybody's lives. And this initiative now, especially next year with the Year of the Arts, the initiative from the Folk Art Society, Newfoundland Labrador Folk Art Society, and myself, is to go out across the island uh, and explore and develop and just see how much interest is there. It comes and goes, it's a hard one to figure because sometimes there's a whole swath of young people playing music, and then within 5 years they've gone and they've moved on, and the younger ones are not into it. You're obviously competing all the time with YouTube and Spotify and all those streaming services that stream music from all over the place into young people's lives. So you're competing uh, with that type of music to try and create the interest with young people in our music. And I have no objection to any form of music, really. But it would be nice the if the young people would realize that just how much of a culture we have here of music, as opposed to other parts of where it's more of a melting pot across the United States and Canada. Whereas here in Newfoundland, we still have a strong affinity and a strong connection to the past and to the music of the past, and that it's important that it continue.
Absolutely. I agree. I know I myself am a musician as well. So uh, and I know the business, it's pretty tough, but
Yes,
I'm a firm believer in traditional music as well, and playing traditional instruments. So uh, I know I'm trying to get my little cousin, but she doesn't really show any interest. So
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
you
No,
know,
it's
it's
it's something that happens, and there's not what would you say? There's not the closeness to the music on the ground level anymore. I mean, in before before everybody had their own computers, their own rooms with computers, and everybody could go and do their own thing. Uh, there's not that sort of sitting around and getting together. Some families still do it, but there's not that general sense of people gathering and playing live music
no,
as much as they were. And so that's something that has to be created and fostered. And that's what the young folk at the hall idea is all about. Now we have the I shouldn't say we have, but the Newfoundland Labrador Folk Art Society has been given some great assistance for next year to develop and to explore. And there's funding that has been awarded to the Folk Art Society to do exactly that. So myself, John Clark, who is who was the events coordinator at the Folk Arts Council, Folk Arts Society, and Rosemary Lawton, a young musician. She's just been hired on by the Folk Arts Society to be the youth programming coordinator. So having
Okay.
somebody in place that's full time employed to do that, I think is a great step in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, Fergus, I know you have a very interesting career, and I know there's more to come from you. Thank you
Well,
for coming on my show today.
I'm very pleased to have been on the show, and it's as a it's an ongoing thing with me. I still really enjoy playing music. I really enjoy singing. Uh, I also get to work apart from Jim Payne and Tickle Harbour and all this stuff. My son, Fergus Brown O'Byrne, is a fabulous, fabulous musician, traditional musician. And
Yeah.
so myself and him get to do shows together as well, occasionally. So that's always nice to do as well. And, in a way where you're connecting musically that way. And it's just great to see him having such an interest in traditional music as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, thank you. It's been a pleasure as always. And thank you all for watching. And please smash that like button and subscribe to see more interesting videos from PowerTalk. Have a good day and be happy.
Here's Tom.